Welcome back, my lovely listeners, and welcome to a new series for the As the Raven Dreams channel that I have decided to call Raven Investigates Still Unsolved Mysteries, which could be an acronym like RISM, or just Raven Investigates for short. I think I'll stick with Raven Investigates as it sounds, not as dumb. Anyways, this whole thing came about one day as I was sitting in bed and watching TV. I was watching Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack, and one of the cases had an after the episode aired update, which led me to ask, how many of the cases were never updated? This show ran from the late 80s well into the early 2000s, and there were a lot of cases covered. So, part of me started thinking and decided, why not do a series based on unsolved and cold cases and maybe the non-case mysteries from the shows that have no explanations? And here we are. On this, the first episode of Raven Investigates. So today, we are going to cover the unsolved murder of Myuu Amado. This entire situation starts back in June of 1992. A 29-year-old Myuu Amado and his girlfriend, Patty Griffin, older brother Joe, and Joe's girlfriend Debbie all decided to take a trip from Los Angeles to Rosarito Beach, Mexico. Arriving around 1 a.m. on June 6th, they stayed in a condo that was owned by Mario's girlfriend's parents, so Debbie's parents. From there, they socialized and just had a good night until somewhere around 3:30 a.m., when Joe and Debbie decided they wanted to go to bed. At 7 a.m., they woke up to Myuu and his girlfriend Patty arguing. Then Myuu entered into Joe's room and told him that he wanted to leave. But after a while, it all seemed to go back to normal. The couple got through their issues. In the afternoon, Joe and Debbie decided to go for a drive around the coast, just kind of have a romantic time to themselves. They returned to the condo around 6:30 p.m., only to find that the condo was vacant and the spare key was nowhere to be found. They found out from the maid that the police had showed up and arrested Myuu for public drunkenness and disorderly conduct. Not too long after this, the police actually returned to the condo and were asking for Patty. According to Debbie, they seemed frantic and suspicious in their mannerisms. Eventually, Patty did return to the condo, and when she was asked where Myuu was, she claimed that she had no idea. This all sounds fairly normal for a situation involving alcohol and hot tempers. Myuu and Patty weren't getting along very well on their impromptu vacation, and they went their separate ways to cool off, and Myuu had a slight run-in with the law. Nothing about this stood out as anything too far out there. But then, things took a really hard turn for the worse. 2 hours after Patty had returned, several detectives showed up to the condo and told them that Myuu was dead. Joe went with the detectives to the police station and was shown photographs for identification. In these photographs, Myuu was shirtless, much to Joe's confusion, and the detectives told him that Myuu had killed himself with the sweater he was wearing and an approximately 3-foot-high bar on a window. When he asked why nobody did anything to stop him from following through, he was told that everyone in the jail was asleep at the time when it took place. This would have been 5 p.m. So everyone inside the jail was asleep at 5 p.m. Anyway, moving on. This is where things really started to spiral out of control. Joe had to go back to California without his brother's body, because Mexican authorities claimed they wanted to hold it until their autopsy was complete, though they refused to give Joe a time frame. The next week, they claimed that the cause of death was loss of oxygen to the brain, caused by him using the sweater around his neck and the bar. Not believing this whatsoever, Joe hired an independent pathologist to perform a second autopsy. This autopsy concluded that Mario had been hit in the upper abdomen, and this caused an internal injury to his liver. It was then concluded that, with this injury, he would not have been able to go through with what he had. On top of this, it was found that the Mexican authorities had violated international agreements by not contacting U.S. consulates in a timely manner following Mario's death, thus starting to point toward a potential cover-up. Later, in 1993, he was exhumed and a third autopsy was performed. From this evidence, it was concluded that, based entirely on this autopsy's findings, Mario was likely murdered and he had not taken his own life. Plugging in some extra details here, it becomes more clear what happened, or at least it becomes easier to speculate. In the 1993 autopsy, fibers were found embedded in Mario's neck. These fibers came from a rope, not a sweater. On top of this, there were also 2 witnesses that claimed they saw Mario being beaten by an officer, and then that officer supposedly tied the sweater around Mario's neck. All of this information leaves us to, again, speculate that Mario was beaten by a police officer and then murdered to cover it up. And this is likely what happened, as former police officer Jose Antonio Verdesco Flores was arrested for the murder. He was tried and then convicted for the death and sentenced to a mere 8.5 years in prison. The victory for the Amado family, however, was not long-lived, as the conviction was overturned a mere 4 months into the officer's sentence. The inmates/witnesses that stated they saw Mario being attacked could not say for sure that it was Officer Flores. As of now, Mario Amado's murder is marked as unsolved. It's believed that Officer Flores was involved, but there's a complete lack of solid evidence. There's also claims that there was a second officer involved, which would mean that one of the killers in this case is still unidentified. Now, this section I'm titling Other Details, Information, and Speculation. And here I want to cover just minor details that were left out of the official case information, minor details that may help you come to a conclusion, and then maybe offer some speculation. Now, with this case, there is some information that should definitely be looked at when considering all of the possibilities. Apparently, Mario was known for being a bit of an alcoholic by even his own family. His brother claimed that he had been despondent in the past due to his chronic alcoholism, and he was even known to make potentially suicidal comments about not wanting to be alive. Mario and Patty spent a lot of their time at Rosarito Beach, drinking, arguing, and, according to witnesses, indulging in other substances like marijuana and cocaine. It's claimed that the police showed up to arrest Mario because he had assaulted Patty, though she refused to sign a complaint. That said, the time difference between his arrest and the police finding his body in the cell was only 45 minutes. 4:30 p.m. for the arrest, 5:15 p.m. when they found his body. Apparently, Mario's liver injury was found by the autopsy in Mexico, but was marked as not being relevant to the cause of death, and that Mario died from asphyxiation. It should also be noted that the Mexican authorities had asked for Mario's body to be exhumed prior to when it was done in 1993, and that Mario's family, Joe in particular, had apparently not been cooperative with them in their investigation. Adversely, one could say that the jails of Tijuana are a bit less than hospitable, and that there have been a number of cases of potential torture and neglect within those walls. But the prison has stated that any aggression used on Mario was necessary, because Mario was, again, as they claim, drunk and unruly. And they also claimed that Mario was in a cell with 4 other males that were arrested for being drunk, and none of them saw anything suspicious. While Officer Flores was convicted of the murder, his appeal resulted in him being released. Flores maintained that he wasn't even on duty when the whole situation took place. He was released due to the judge being unsure of the overall cause of death. He claimed that it could have been through hanging, or it could have been his injuries. From there, he claimed that those injuries could have occurred before Mario's arrest. On top of that, the witnesses that state Mario had been beaten by an officer could not pinpoint that it was Flores. They said it was another officer altogether. So from all this, we have to pull together an assumption of what happened. And then we can look at the possible suspects. This whole situation is an incredibly strange one, and it's honestly kind of difficult to really pinpoint what may have happened, beyond, again, our simple speculations. We have the obvious suspects, the police officer that was on duty. Whether or not this was Officer Flores is honestly up in the air. While he seemed to look good for it, there's a lot of speculation and possibility, including that he may not have even been on duty when it happened. That to me is really strange, since I haven't seen anything online that is any sort of schedule or any sort of time clock information. Basically, nothing in the investigation has been used to prove that Officer Flores was actually the one on duty. Now, I've never been to Tijuana. I don't know anything about Tijuana. I don't know how Tijuana operates their prisons, and this was back in 1992. Things were a bit less complex back then. So honestly, it just bothers me that there's nothing that's come out like a schedule or information pointing to the fact that he was actually on duty. Then, there's the other possibility. Mario may have taken his own life. He apparently had issues that were worsened by his alcoholism, and those issues can definitely lead to some dark possibilities. One thing that makes this sketchy, in the 1993 autopsy, there were fibers that were found around Mario's neck, and those fibers were more consistent with rope than they were a sweater. So I do have to lay this possibility out. Is it possible that Mario may had used a rope that he got a hold of in the cell? Possibly, and maybe the officers took the rope and used his sweater to make themselves look less incompetent. This would still be a cover-up for sure, but it would be less of one. Now, this section may be the most controversial thing on my channel, to be completely honest with you. And that is my personal opinion or conclusion on this case. I want to round that statement off by saying I don't know what happened, okay? I do not know how the situation played out. Only a handful of people can actually know that. This whole section is 100% my personal opinion. And this is only from my personal speculation that I take upon the information and evidence that was put before me. That said, on this case, I don't know. And I hate to say that on the first case that I cover, but I genuinely have no idea. In looking at the evidence, I wanted to lean toward the officer doing it and covering it up, like the official statements have been. But then I kept reading and finding more and more that made me think that anything was really possible in this situation. If I had to come up with an answer, I would say it probably went like this. Mario was probably arrested for being drunk and disorderly. He was thrown in the cell, and he was probably causing issues. We know he had a temper when he drank from his case with Patty. The reason he was arrested was that he assaulted her. He may have been verbally abusive to the officer, and maybe he threatened them. From this, the officer felt the need to subdue him, but maybe that officer went overboard and ended up causing a severe internal injury. When they found him dead, they decided to cover it up and did so by pretending that he hung himself. The question in this scenario is, again, the rope fibers. I don't really have an answer for this one, other than maybe they started to tie him up with a rope and make it look like he took his own life, but then they realized that rope in a jail cell wasn't plausible and moved on to a sweater. Another possibility, obviously, is that the officer killed him on purpose. He caused injuries, and he used the rope to strangle him to finish the job. Either way, I would say that he was most likely murdered by an officer, be it on accident or intentionally. Less likely, he took his own life and the police tried to cover their own asses by making it look like it couldn't have been prevented, in essence, using his sweater. Both of these scenarios would be considered either homicide or negligence that led to death/negligent homicide, and should absolutely be charged as such. But honestly, looking over this case and how long it's been and the information that's been given to everyone, in the end, it just looks like justice will most likely never be served in this case, simply due to the lack of solid evidence. So that was the unsolved murder case of Mario Amado. This case is one that is really interesting to read, simply because of the people involved and the potential of a cover-up by the entire Mexican government. It's hard to really say. Moving on from this case, I wanted to ask everyone, what did you think of this series? Do you think I should keep going with it? I intend to do it for a while, and I have another case actually lined up. So let me know what you thought of the video, and let me know what you think of this case. Who do you think is responsible? And if you have an idea of what you think happened, explain yourself. Don't just say it was the guards. Say it was the guards because of this. I want to cause discussion here. I want to actually get people talking about this and interested in these cases, because that's just the best way to talk about things like this, right? So again, this series, Raven Investigates, or Raven Investigates Still Unsolved Mysteries. That's a dumb name. I don't know why I came up with it. Is one that I intend to keep going with, and I hope you guys enjoy it. These are actually really... I don't mean to classify these as fun. I'm sorry that I'm going to say these are fun, but they are fun to do. In that I get to sit down, look at a case, do a bunch of research, and put together a script for you guys. And being the analytical person that I am, putting together a script from research is actually quite entertaining for me. Down in the description, you will find a link to a document where I wrote my script. So I will actually give you guys the script if you want to look at it. I went off script a little bit, but you'll have the information. And in that same document, the last page of it is actually the list of my sources. I intend to do this every single video. I will upload the script for the video and the sources that I use to make the information. That way you guys can fact check me. If I get something wrong, or if you find information to the contrary of what I reported, please tell me. I will absolutely release update videos on these as information is brought in front of me, okay? All that said, guys, if you liked it, again, you know the drill. Thumbs up. If you really want more, subscribe. But until the next video, this is Raven, signing off. Sleep well.